I won't know what to do.
You won't know what to do? The second Thursday is going to be wide open. Yeah. We can still get together and talk about housing. Yeah? No? No? I've enjoyed this. You guys are committed to work with.
How do you feel about it?
Pardon?
How do you feel about it?
I feel that I feel we're going to leave the night tonight with some solid recommendations. I feel that you all as a group have been very thoughtful about the work that you've done, so I think that we'll feel pretty confident in what we're proposing to the Planning Commission. That's how I feel. I am excited to talk about the results of this with the rest of the economic development community. As I was talking to a couple of people beforehand, I was at the EDA, Economic Development Administration University Center regional meeting for the Upper Midwest yesterday. And we started a conversation with that organization last July June 2018, about housing. And we brought in some experts to talk to all of the PIs and professors and directors that work with the EDA University Center program about housing, because every community across the Upper Midwest is having this issue. It's different in every community that reflects what the community is about. They have been, as a group, this is Purdue University, the University of Minnesota, Michigan State, so some really top-flight schools have been asking me for updates about what this group is doing, because I have a feeling our work here is going to be a model for how this is approached with the community-based housing study and decision-making consensus group process. So I feel really good about it personally. How do you guys feel about it? You're the task force. This is your project, not mine. I facilitate this. This is your baby.
And you put it together very nicely in that draft report.
Thank you. Yeah. And there's elements that we haven't uploaded to the draft report. We have all of the deliberations that you guys have done. We have notes from every time we have a chance to fill out that. That is going to be summarized in the section that includes your recommendations, and I'll be distributing that to you all before it goes to the Plan Commission, before we present it, so you have a chance to provide feedback, and if there's anything in there that you feel is not reflected accurately, you can make those corrections. So your voice, we're hoping, is going to be really strong in the final report. This is the data summary of all the different things that have presented over the course of the year, plus some of the data that we have on file with the village.
That was an education in and of itself, all the speakers.
Yeah, that really was. It's been like a master's class in urban planning and housing development. Yeah, it's been pretty cool.
Where will the information get disseminated beyond that point?
So the Plan Commission is our primary audience because they're looking for us for recommendations. And this report will, we called it to order. Yeah, we're just kind of talking about where the report's going and what we're doing next. So the Plan Commission is our first stop. The Plan Commission then, if they adopt the recommendations, I assume they're going to forward it to the village board. Is that they'll see it. It'll live online within the archives of the village, and it'll be accessible to anyone who wants to read it. Our report, since it's public information, is then outside of the village of Waunakee. Actually, there are a lot of people who ask for copies of it. So it will, Extension will be looking at this widely as a model for how they can use it. So they'll be reading it in Rhinelander. They'll know about us in Platteville. And these are all communities that have been asking. Purdue University wants a copy of what we're doing, wants to possibly talk to us more extensively about the project as well. So that's it's going to go all over. And when I send you the information, if you're like, I only want my name, because we'll list everyone's names in the task force. I only want my name within the village of Waunakee. I don't want people in Purdue to have my name. We're not going to call you or anything, but we'll subsidize your name off of it. So, yes.
One thing I didn't see in here, maybe it wasn't captured, I didn't look at close enough, but we had the pieces around policy and the 4 or 5 different recommendations. But I only see this consensus recommendations. It's not formatted in that manner. Is that, did I miss it, or is it?
Is the grid from the brainstorming that we did?
Yeah.
A couple, yeah, we had, so that was not distributed. I was hoping everyone would bring that copy
Okay.
today, and I'm guessing you did not. So I will, as we're having discussions, I will take that out of my computer and put it up. But we had that brainstorming where we kind of thought minimum, gap, maximum. So the gap numbers I have up here, they're updated a little bit from what was in the document that Paulson gave us. I went back and looked at his data and then updated it with the census numbers and the numbers we have in file.
Maybe it's something different. I'm thinking about the discussion we had that we broke down in tables at the end, and we had policy. That's the one. Yeah. Is that
In the draft report.
in the draft?
No,
Okay.
yeah, and that's not anything that hasn't been approved. So the draft report, because it has been distributed to you all, is a publicly available document. So I didn't put any recommendations that require your approval in the draft report. If we don't want it out there, people think you've made a recommendation that you have not made yet.
That seems like punchline kind of stuff for us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Important.
Yeah, so it will be in the final report, but nothing went in there that could potentially cause people outside the process. Say, wait a minute, they're recommending that. Yeah. Other questions or suggestions for the good of the cause? Yes,
I'll admit, I did not read through the whole draft. I started to. I'm assuming that there's going to be proofreading and grammatical errors.
Yes.
So I think I got to 6 in the first paragraph and thought,
Yes, it will be. All right, other questions? All right, let us start then. So today's goals are going to be decide on recommendations, number 1. Number 2, determine the goal for the number of units that we will recommend, the task force will recommend that the village of Waunakee strive to build. So a weirdly worded sentence that the village will not be building units. These are recommendations of how many should be built in the village, not becoming a developer business. Most likely, we recommend that and adopt it. I don't think that was in any of your recommendations. So those are our 2 goals today. I've set my alarm on my phone for 7:15, so our other goal is to get those all on paper by 7:15 and have 15 minutes of grace time to be there. Good? So our agenda, policy, process, strategy, recommendations. We'll talk a little bit, just very briefly about how we'll go about doing that today. Our first task is to, and this is one we haven't really talked about a whole lot. This was one of our very first items that we were asked to look at. We sort of keep the hand down the road on this a little bit. But there is that policy 133 or policy 2.5, and I circulated a copy of that to everybody. There should be copies on the table. And we were asked to provide an opinion or an advisement, not to rewrite the policy, we're not policy writers, and that would take all night and then some. To provide an opinion or an advisement on that policy, and that policy requires that new developments not contain more than 25% attached units. Redevelopment projects and senior housing projects are exempt from that policy. So that's the first thing we'll talk about tonight. The second big decision we'll make is we'll affirm and edit the consensus recommendations that were determined by the June deliberation results. It was actually the May deliberation survey, which we rewrote for June. Consensus recommendations might be considered those that scored an 8.0 or above in terms of on a 0 to 10 scale when we looked at the averages, because that meant for the most part people were giving them 7s, 8s, 9s, 10s. Anything from 7.0 to 8.0, we want to talk about whether we're going to recommend, and below 7.0, we want to discuss those recommendations as needed. And so those are broken down in one of the documents that I gave to you. And then the last thing we're going to do tonight is make a consensus decision regarding the recommended number of units that target our different income levels. Does that sound achievable? We're going to go through this. We're going to do it. We have faith in us. All right. But circle back around to what our original charge was. Our original charge is we were formed because the village is seeking to evaluate the existing housing mix by understanding community, economic, and social needs, both now and predicted in the future. As part of the evaluation, it's hoped that we determine the need for housing options that appropriately fit the definition of affordable. However, and understandably, the definition for affordable in relation to the economic conditions of Waunakee should also be clarified. Other population housing needs, such as senior housing, should also be evaluated. All right. I'm good? Are you ready to go on to the first task? All right, buckle in, here we go. Very first thing that we'll tackle tonight is section 133-16. This is the restriction on rezoning for multifamily use. And in the document, it's got a blue line up here. I've showed a photocopy he sent it from paper. You can read a little bit of the background. This is excerpted from amendment considerations that was prepared by MSA, which is a professional services consulting firm that was working with the village last year. And the background they give is they said the zoning code allows rezoning to R4, R5, or PUD with multifamily use only if the multifamily is less than 25% of all housing units within the village. There's a strong demand for multifamily units right now. Many have been approved and are built in the downtown district. The demand is further documented by the 2017 housing study prepared for the village by Carpsey. And then they give us a little bit of information on the American Community Survey. They say 70% of the Waunakee units are in buildings with 3 or more units. For reference, that figure is 44% in Middleton, 38% in Sun Prairie, 45% in Fitchburg, 22% in DeForest, and 27% in Verona. And specifically what I believe we've been asked to consider is the recommendation, and Chris, you can interject here and affirm or say it should be a little more specific than that. But specifically the lines that say that this is the second paragraph B, determination for rezoning, no additional rezoning to R4, R5, or PUD with multifamily units shall be allowed, which would have the effect of allowing more than 25% of the total dwelling units to be multifamily units. Dwelling units designed and approved as owner-occupied condominiums under the condominium declaration prohibits the rental shall not be considered single to or multifamily residences for the purposes of the determination under this subsection. Any other condominium dwellings should be considered multifamily. In implementing this subsection, the Plan Commission may either deny or modify a proposed zoning amendment or conditional use permit or direct the building inspector to not issue additional building permits unless such issuance be consistent with the intent of this section, which is why we're not rewriting it, just providing recommendation on it. But Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, but the portion that we were asked to weigh in on is the 25%.
That's correct.
Rule. And do I have it correct when I am interpreting this policy that the 25% with the exception of redevelopment or senior housing
Yes.
is one of the things that we think is pushing the development or the push to redevelop existing neighborhoods. The situation we had last year was perhaps a result of that. So that if we're changing that, we may see multifamily pressure pulled off of existing neighborhoods.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
You're right.
All right, cool. I want to be very careful how I say that. Very careful how I say that. So if our choices are to advise that this be re-examined, advise that the restriction is removed, or advise that it's rewritten.
All right, I'll start.
Yes.
In the context of what we're attempting to do here, with looking at the general picture with affordable and specialty housing for seniors and stuff like that, since it's not explicitly defined in the ordinance as to the type of replacement buildings that would be built, or not replacement, because that's, we're trying to avoid that. The new buildings that would be built, not rehabbed. How is that going to help for affordable housing? Because these would presumably just continue to be market rate or above multifamily. I'm assuming the T-Wall project was market rate or above. So if we pull this back, are we worsening this situation?
I can't talk to the T-Wall.
No, I'm sorry. I know. I'm sorry. I didn't mean that. Okay, not T-Wall. Just imagine an imaginary developer says they want to come in and they want to redevelop, or they want to do something R4 or whatever, what's easier. And they say, I want to build things, and you know, it'd be, otherwise I'm going to redevelop downtown because your 25% limit. But I thought part of our charge was to look at affordability. So I just feel like that if we're messing with this, that's not really going to have a direct impact on affordability unless there was some sort of way. I know we're not rewriting policy, but unless there's some sort of way that policy could be amended to say, you know, like go above 25% if the intent is to have affordable housing, which would be an administrative nightmare for a village to do. So I wouldn't even suggest that. But I'm just saying, as far as our charge, I'm having trouble kind of reconciling why this is important to what we're doing if it may not have any positive effect on affordable housing, if it just makes it worse. This is a concern.
Yeah, I can answer that. I want to get Nyla's comment in first.
Okay, this isn't what he's talking about, but I feel that it's a heavy lift to expect redevelopment to take care of the multifamily housing in the older areas of town, and for there not to be the expectation for more multifamily housing and new developments. If we're concerned about sprawl, we all have to be part of finding solutions to that sprawl. So that's my comment.
It's more of a question that, as I read this, is I'm not sure how this restriction would apply if the Plan Commission decided that they were going to develop X number of units. And so is the assumption that having this restriction would make that impossible to reach?
Yeah.
And if that's the case, then I think we have to consider some kind of change to this if indeed it's going to restrict whatever recommendation. It looks like it perhaps could be conflicting with anything else we recommend, and they're ending up looking saying we can't do it because we got the ordinance.
So the word, it's maybe not impossible, but it will be far more challenging. If we go back to Kurt Paulson's presentation with us, he said the best way to get affordable rental housing is not to place it in an existing neighborhood, but to do a greenfield development. And so a greenfield development under this ordinance, and Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, would mean that we are putting it in an existing, in a planned subdivision. So when somebody's coming to the table and planning on putting in a new subdivision, we could allow it in that instance, but we couldn't just take a 2 acres section of land and develop that without anything else wrong, because then it would be 100% of that new development would be affordable multifamily units.
Correct.
Yeah. So that's part of the issue with it, is that no more than 25% of the development can be that.
I would hate to see us having dedicated 9 meetings or however long we've been meeting and build a trap that can't happen.
I see. I mean, I understand that we're going saying there, but this ordinance is regulatory. What we're saying is a suggestion. So if they change the ordinance, then but if if what we're going to propose doesn't have the same teeth as an actual ordinance has, so like it could come in and I'm not saying this will happen at all, but it would leave the door open for someone to come in and say, I'm not going to make them affordable though, but thank you for raising the cap. Again, I'm just playing devil's advocate here. I'm not trying to.
I could exactly see that happen.
I'm not casting aspersions on anybody. I'm just thinking legally though, we would have no leg to stand on.
We don't have authority to do anything.
Right.
We're only recommending. But if we have a recommendation and we want to point to this, we ought to have freedom to be able to do that, I believe.
So we could make a recommendation, like, we believe that this is restricting the development of affordable housing units, and it should be written in such a way that allows multifamily housing to be developed for affordability.
I'm just concerned that some parts could be cherry picked.
Can we put the words of for affordability into the ordinance? Recommend that that be put into the ordinance when they're looking at changing it? That so much percentage of the 25% be at affordable rates or whatever percentage. So say we up it to 30% and 20% can be market rate, but 10% have to be affordable.
I think the question that's going to come up is whose definition of affordable are we going to use? How long are we going to use it? Will it be in play? And what's affordable here is not affordable there. So that I think that affordable is too nebulous a word to put into something like
I think
this.
if we would actually evaluate people, we would see that more people are living above what they're supposed to be paying for rent or home values than what we really think.
It would require them, not us, obviously.
Right.
It would require them to actually amend another part of the ordinance to define, like on the definitions of
Right.
that, which is a tall order,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
So what would our recommendation be for this? Do we like the 25% rule or do we not like the 25% rule? Do we want to do a thumbs up, thumbs middle, thumbs down on it? Or talk more about it? This is a tough one. None of these are easy tonight. We saved all of our thinking for last, our hard thinking, our hard ass thinking. Do you want to take a show of hands and, or thumbs up on, do we feel this restricts multifamily development?
Yes.
Take it. Yes. General, let me see, so general consensus, yes, this restricts multifamily development. Can we make a note of that? Like, would that be a consensus statement we could put in? Okay. And this was passed in 1997, I think it was, when you look back at the data. Kind of at the end of a run-up of a lot of apartment buildings going up in town. The farmer, if you look back at the housing permits and development permits, at that point in time, there was a huge run-up in multifamily in Waunakee, and very few, relatively speaking. So this was in response to what was happening in the village in 1987.
Do you know if, it's not very Pittsburgh Forest, they had restrictions that they removed, or this is something?
They do not. So we had that document earlier in the year where the intern call up and see if there were restrictions in those communities. They don't. So there is then kind of a more buildup in those communities of multifamily housing.
This is true. And is it, do you know if they used to have restrictions that they removed, or?
Yeah. When we talked to them, when our intern talked to them, I don't know that she asked that specific question, but she asked if they had anything on those now, and the answer was no. Yeah. Now, those communities often, and correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, ask us how we are fostering single-family housing development. So, that is so. I would not. I don't know enough about those communities' plans in the future, but I would not be surprised if they are maybe having discussions about permitting and how we balance multifamily single family.
So the only comment I'm going to make, I'm trying not to answer because I don't want to influence all of you by looking with what my opinion is. I want you to give yours. So it's important that everybody participates. When Kristen asks you these questions, it's important that all are participating to make sure we have a good, broad understanding of what we're looking at doing. That's why all of us are here. So if she asks for the thumbs up, thumbs down, I'm not going to do it. I'm just telling you right now because I don't want mine to influence you. I hope you understand that. That's why I'm doing that, and that's why you're all here today. I could sit and every time I want something that way, I'm going to go for it. But I want you guys to absolutely give your input right now. And this is like crunch time for all of us because we have to have results and get this so we can make a recommendation. We have to get it there, so.
I agree, I understand you have to have a definition of workforce housing or whatever. But I think the meat of the thing for me is if we raise the percentage of multiple housing without having it in the definition that a certain percentage has to be used for workforce housing, we're completely defeating the purpose.
I agree.
I also agree.
I think we would, perhaps, but again, I don't know the math, but if we do the math and saying that we're looking for this number of affordable units, that I believe those two will play together, but I don't know that. I don't know whether this ordinance should have that language or not.
From experience in my life, if you leave something open, it's not going to happen. You have to somehow put it on paper and make it part of the comprehensive plan, or it's not going to happen. And then we've sat here all these months and haven't accomplished a thing.
Can we make a recommendation, even that if we don't know exactly how to word it, but just say like what our intentions are and have whoever's rewriting this look at the best way to encapsulate all of that? I mean, it's a lot to work in.
We can't do it. We cannot. Policy writing, such a headache. I don't do that for a reason. Because what you write and then what is actually implemented you have to really know what you're doing. But we can say easily, this needs to be rewritten, and here's why we think it needs to be written. So we've given our thumbs up to the fact that we're not comfortable with the 25% restriction on multifamily development. So let's, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
No, please, go.
Like maybe there could be like an extension to it saying like certain exceptions would be given in X, in certain, if these criteria are met for affordable housing and whoever's developing it can show that that's what their intentions are and their goal too. So like maybe the policy could stay the same, but just if somebody goes above and beyond to make more affordable housing. I don't know how to say that correctly, but.
Policy exceptions based on affordability. Let's zone in on that term affordability. We've been talking about the missing middle, which is 80 to 100% of middle income. We're going to look at a graph about that group in a little bit. We've also talked about the 60 to 80, 40 to 60, and then below 30, which is different segments of need in terms of assistance for housing. When we say affordable, do we want to define it in those terms? These are the groups we're most concerned that we don't have to be most concerned about one group or another. We can be equally concerned about all groups. But do we want to term it that way in terms of 60 to 80% of area median income, or 40 to 60% of area median income? That's a movable number from year to year. It depends on who's in the community, who's in, but it's also a fairly recognizable standard to those that are developing. And it gives us a number. But this is the income per household. What do you think of that?
I have something, but it's not related to this.
I would like to see it based off the HUD numbers because they're incredibly hard to challenge those from an outside source. Everybody uses HUD's numbers. Financing programs are based off of HUD's numbers. If we're going to be asking developers to build workforce housing, they're applying for grants and FHFB money. They're going to use HUD numbers. So I know that it's not always a popular opinion because a lot of people think that we should have something different, but that's the constraints we live in the finance world. So from a policy standpoint, I think that would be the strongest way to enforce it. And that way you also don't have to review your policy every year when numbers change. You can just say, see, HUD's numbers.
All right, so I'm now going to look up the graph with other numbers on it, so we can see what that looks like.
One of the things that I think we should also consider about this is that we shouldn't make the assumption that affordable units are going to have to be multi-unit.
Right.
There are developments where it's affordable. Again, I don't want to be a broken record, but I talked about habitat developments where there are individual dwellings that are affordable. So I don't want us just to think that we're creating a box around that.
Correct.
That's great.
Good. thank you.
I was reading an article in Phoenix, Arizona. They were building 4-bedroom, 1,600 square foot houses, and they were selling them for $260,000. I mean, that would be affordable for many people.
Okay, so there's the HUD numbers. And they use area median income too. So maybe more TP as per TP.
Yeah, it's harder for people to dispute when you're using those. It almost takes the bias out of it because that was just, here's the facts.
All right, so we've agreed on the 25% restriction on multifamily development is too restrictive. That it may be driving multifamily housing away in a way that's impacted affordable housing using the HUD limits. Second part of that is that restriction applies to new developments. Do we want to recommend that they reconsider that only applying to new developments? Do we want to take that out of it? Or we just want to have them reconsider the 25% number? The exception to what I think I want to say is that the exception to that 25% rule is redevelopment in senior housing. Do we want to make a statement about that? That we're concerned that this is prompting redevelopment in neighborhoods that are not necessarily interested in redevelopment? You say some shaking of the heads? Okay. Yes?
As I said before, to expect all of it to be done through redevelopment is a lot for the downtown and the older areas of town to handle. And for all of it to be put on them, when we're concerned about sprawl, is kind of, we're saying one thing and allowing another thing if we don't change that.
So do we want to do a thumbs up, thumbs middle, or thumbs down on the statement that we think this is prompting redevelopment in downtown or other neighborhoods that might not be open to redevelopment? Thumbs up. Or we're finding the wording, thumbs down, whose middle comes down? Or we've got like a lot of thumbs, middles, and thumbs down. Okay. Maybe not a great statement. We want to just limit it to like reconsider the 25%. Yes, Aaron.
Should we consider that the number we decided on later tonight is just not included in these counts?
Okay. So the number we decide on later on tonight is not included in these counts. We could state that as that in order, we would encourage exceptions to this rule in order to meet the recommendations.
Yeah, I don't know how that exactly works, but
Yeah.
prioritizing.
Confusing? I'm a little worried, I get what we're saying. I'm a little bit worried about how I would word it in a way that would clearly express.
How that would be in practice, because an ordinance is an ordinance.
Pardon?
An ordinance is an ordinance, so I don't know that it allows you to have language of, well, but if.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe.
That's what gets us into trouble.
So do we want to just go with a straightforward recommendation that the 25% limit is too restrictive and we would like it to be reconsidered? Or do we want to expand on that?
I mean, we're not policy writers, as it said, so yeah.
Thumbs up?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, we're going to keep it simple. Okay, let's actually take a full thumbs up. Thumbs middle, thumbs down. Yeah. I have no vote in this stuff. I'm just demonstrating what thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs down. All right. We made one decision. Hey, this is good, right? Okay. We're getting there. We're getting there. Okay, second one. Affirm and edit consensus recommendations as determined by the May/June deliberation survey results. The most complex survey of 2020. that. All right, so when I was doing this, and I was looking at the distribution of the averages, we're a pretty agreeable group for the most part. There were some ideas that got 1s and 2s from people, but for the most part, the base was like 3. If somebody thought an idea was a bad thing, they gave it a 3 instead of a 1. So when we look at consensus, it seemed that the 8s and above, those that they had an average score of 8 and above, were pretty well agreed on, but let's go through those point by point. It is awfully small reading, so you should have at your table another distinctive looking black and white piece of paper, a lot of writing on it. And this is a screenshot of the first 7 recommendations. And do we want to do a thumbs up, thumbs middle, or thumbs down for each of these? Okay. So recommendation number 1, recommend that the village creates an index/catalog of publicly available programs designed to provide assistance to homeowners and home buyers. Thumbs up? All right, unanimous. Number 2, and that was from the, maybe Greg's suggestion, the meeting we had, the 3-4 speakers that came in. We really had some fantastic information to share. Recommendation number 2, recommend that the village work with developers and/or lenders to pursue a variety of housing loans/credits, including TIF financing, low-income housing tax credits, and assistance from the federal home loan bank. Thumbs up, thumbs middle, thumbs down. Excellent. 2, completely unanimous. Number 3, develop an ongoing committee that includes Plan Commission and Housing Task Force members to continue addressing long-term affordable home ownership and rental options. Thumbs up, thumbs middle, thumbs down. All right, more thumbs up than thumbs middle or thumbs down. Number 4, recommend that the village works to identify land and developers for smaller development projects, e.g. incremental development options that are neighborhood scale, such as fourplex, small unit, multifamily. Thumbs up, thumbs middle, thumbs down. All right, that one's unanimous. Number 5, recommend that the village require a range of housing affordability options in the same development with a range of housing types. Thumbs up, thumbs middle, thumbs down. Thumbs middle, thumbs up, okay. That one's a majority. Number 6, recommend that the village hold periodic seminars and outreach to provide first-time homebuyer guidance and increase the awareness of publicly available programs designed to provide assistance to homeowners and home buyers. Thumbs up, thumbs middle, thumbs down. Okay, more thumbs up and thumbs middle or thumbs down.
Can I make a recommendation?
Yes.
Actually, no, I can't change the wording on this, never mind.
Okay. Can I make a friendly comment?
Well, it's kind of just that village works with, an outside. It doesn't have to be the village that provides the center. In most cases, it's not. It's usually like an outside, like a bank or credit union or something like that would do it.
So recommend that the village hold or work with or host, it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
I think what he's saying is that the village would bring in a speaker of some sort that would either be a financial professional or a bank.
They'll probably do it for free,
Right?
Okay.
as opposed to the village having to pay for it.
Okay. So should we add that as a suggestion to this?
I think if everybody's okay with it, sorry, I was just,
That's okay. I'll make a note of that. I'll provide.
doesn't pay for something that we could probably.
Yeah. I agree. I prefer free things. Personally. Recommend that the village grant impact fee waivers to developers willing to commit to building a percentage of workforce/affordable housing.
I don't know, because how much? What's the payoff gonna be? Is it going to be, if they get the impact fee waivers, is it going to make it, are they going to do enough to make it worthwhile?
That's a good question. What are your thoughts? This one might need discussion. Is this one need discussion? I feel like it's a while since we've looked at these. if there's some questions we're having, we've got the time to discuss it. We are at 6:17, so we're doing really well. What are your thoughts? Has anyone thought about this since they took it and?
We can't see the table or anything, can we?
Pardon?
Would it help if we saw the impact fee table or?
Yes.
Because that was the question.
Question is, can I find the impact? It would be helpful to see it. Do not think we've got a copy. I don't think I have a copy of it. They do have a copy of it on the survey.
Okay.
You want to quick try to log in?
I just think it would help people to know.
Part of what I think we don't have, and I'm with, I know this one bothered me too, because I don't know how developers act and what influences them. And, I'm guessing they're looking at the total cost, the total opportunity that they have to gain from a development, and I just don't know whether this makes a difference or not. So I would be I don't know, I'd be a mid-thumb on this, because I don't know enough about how developers act.
The other aspect to that is how is it going to affect, for instance, parks? Because if we start doing developments without parks, or if our parks are hurting, this is a question that has more than one side.
I think it was the third result on your search, by the way.
Third result of my search?
Yeah.
Okay. 1, 2, 3. That's the schedule.
No.
No?
Wrong. Oh, yeah, I did not take it.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah.
So it'd be Roy, Peter, Van Paul.
So it's $1,600 a unit for duplex or multifamily. So if you built a 100-unit multifamily, that would be a loss or reduction of $165,000. Is my math right? We use those to build parks or to maintain parks or all of the above? Yeah,
Mostly build.
mostly build.
The
So,
initial, it's for the initial fee to go to the park. Not
So-
necessarily-
so if
It's
you
not
don't
there for the main.
do that, then there's no way to fund it. There's really no practical way to fund a park.
It just goes from a different category.
Okay.
You have to come out of that one. This is when I'll speak up. I'm opposed to this portion, just because we have these impact fees and our budgets have been based on these impact fees for years. And
Chris, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I'll be louder. I'm opposed to this because our impact fees have been in place for many, many years, and our systems are set up right now. As we develop parks, those funds are there to do this, and it would be completely changing that system, which has served us very well.
Yeah.
So I don't like, I think you said Robbie, Peter, paid Paul. It's kind of, that's what we're doing. Only we have it already set up in the system to be done this way.
Yeah, yeah, that's a big hit.
My thought is from the speakers we had, even though if it's considered affordable, they should have some of the same amenities as any other development, so why would we do this? We would look for developers who are already going to do affordable and know what they're doing to set up the parks and everything that should be with that type of development.
Yeah. That very first night, when we had Dave Mercoulier come out, we talked about things that were really high in the sky at the time.
Yeah.
It was like, what was that all about? Yeah, we talked about the need for these things. So do we want to, this was a consensus one, do we want to reconsider it? Do we give a thumbs up, thumbs middle, thumbs down to this one? Thumbs up, thumbs middle, thumbs down?
Can I ask her a question?
Yes.
Because I don't remember when Kurt Paulson, when he was showing us the Middleton numbers and things that, I don't remember, did they even have impact fee waivers in there?
I don't recall them,
Because I don't remember.
but I don't know if that's accurate. I might just not recall them because it was several months ago.
Yeah, I know, I'm asking it all
Yeah.
over here.
Right now, I would have looked it up, but that's what this conversation. I didn't look that up, I should have never looked that up. So take a thumbs up, thumbs middle, thumbs down. All right. This is removed from consensus unanimously. All right. Okay. Next up. These are near consensus. Number one, in near consensus, was recommend a requirement that a percentage of units in certain rental apartments be set aside as workforce housing for those in the community. Yes.
Instead of saying certain, I'd be more comfortable if it said new or redeveloped or remodeled or whatever.
So remove the word certain.
Yes, and put in new and or remodeled.
I need to ask a question then. If you're gonna say that, wouldn't you just use the word all? I mean, what other type? would there be besides new or remodeled?
Because we have, something that's existing that doesn't meet that requirement, how, you couldn't make that happen.
I mean, if you wanted to write it and say all except for things built prior to, yeah, I mean, that would have to be an ordinance change.
Well, we're just giving them.
Yeah, I know, sorry. I'm overthinking it, I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's better to overthink than to underthink.
The question I had for this is that does this say that they're for only people that are going to work in the community? Because you don't have, I don't think you have any clue to be able to follow that up, to know whether that's true or not true, or how would you even ask? How would they may not even know if they're going to find a job here.
Yeah.
I think that in the community, for those in the community, that should be dropped.
Cross that out. Yeah. This
Well,
wasn't-
that's just you shouldn't cross it off just because I said it.
No, but it makes sense.
Take a vote
No,
on
I
crossing it
agree.
out.
Yeah.
Thumbs up, thumbs middle, thumbs down on crossing that out.
But yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thumbs up, okay. Consensus on that?
And I'm somebody that has jobs that I want people to live in, but I still think this language would be really hard for anyone to be able to
Yeah.
work with.
Do we need to settle on whether we're going to use workforce or affordable and be consistent throughout?
Yes.
Because I think that's part of the issue with this one. This is the first time we've really looked at the workforce and what we're doing at this moment. And then down the ways in number 3, it's got workforce / affordable. I think we need to settle on the term that we want to use and be consistent.
What term do we want to use?
Workforce.
Workforce?
Affordable.
Yeah, I'm okay.
Because that's more of a national term, it's more known and it's maybe more tied to those federal programs and things than workforce. What does that mean? Who's workforce? You'd be working and making millions and you're part of the workforce.
I will say that the reason that they use workforce instead of affordable is that you can have the same two policies, identical, and if you use affordable housing in one and workforce in another, affordable in another, passing workforce. Okay. Yeah, people
Can
use a euphemism for.
Can we do
Yeah.
workforce / affordable then and make it the same as, at least so the verbiage is somewhat the same as what's in 3 then? Or is that not a good idea?
One of my recommendations for messaging would be to not use the word.
Yeah.
We use it here amongst ourselves because we know it's defined as this 80 to 100 or 60 to 80 living, and we talked about that pretty exhaustively. The rest of the community will not hear that. We say affordable housing is 80 to 100% of area median income. They will not hear that. They will not register that that in this case is 80,000 to 100,000 in Waunakee. They'll only hear affordable. And when you look at the one question we asked on the survey about affordable housing, people were like, I don't know what they think affordable housing is, but they're not happy at any income level for answering that. So I think we'll be really clear in how we use that word, because that will be a controversy, a point of controversy. We use it here all the time. We know what we all mean. But outside of that, we're a special club. So going back to this, so recommend a requirement as you said, have to be new. Rental apartments be set aside as workforce housing.
New or remodeled?
New or remodeled.
I thought we voted to strike this whole.
Do we vote to strike the whole thing? We want to take a vote on the whole
Just
thing?
No, we moved to take out for those in the community.
Oh, for those in the community, oh, okay.
Yeah, no, we're still looking at the whole thing. So should I pull up a new slide and write it out as it could be? Sorry about that. Let's merge this. Okay, so as we're talking about it, we're saying recommend a requirement that a percentage of units in new rental apartments be set aside as workforce housing.
Okay, are we going to just go with the new or the new and remodeled?
Can you require remodeling? I don't know if we.
I don't know.
I really don't know. Like if somebody wants to replace bathtubs and needs a builder's permit for that.
No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about when they're doing a complete overhaul.
If that could cause me not to be able to live in my apartment.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's true. Good point.
All of us could be in a higher income and all of a sudden, no,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, now
Yeah.
you have to leave.
That's
because
true. Yeah,
Your unit's gotta be affordable.
okay, that's true.
You make too much money.
Well, not only a percentage of units would be, but it could leave someone out, yeah.
Okay, I'm just gonna say, I'm against this one completely. Because the way, just the concept in general. I don't think it's going to accomplish what we want to accomplish, because it's going to create a situation where we'll probably scare off development that we need. I mean, we need, it's going to be really unpopular, we need both types of development. We need affordable and we need regular
By
development.
the nature of the name rentable.
And if we start requiring that
Rental.
all new units, all new rental apartments have to have a set aside, we're probably going to run into some issues with attracting people. I mean, this would have to be really tightly hand in hand with, we're going to require you to have a set aside for workforce housing, and we're going to help you get the financing for that because we know you're going to lose money on the deal if you have to do it in market rate. So I'm not warm and fuzzy with it as it is. Like, if that's just something that gets appointed, but we don't take everything else with it. I'm trying to take a big picture rather than just individual item.
The unintended consequences.
Yeah.
Saying we want this, yeah.
Maybe we could look at number 5 on the same grouping. I think it's similar and we'll have the same discussion.
Yeah. That one, actually, number 5 might take care of it.
Okay.
Because if something's going to be done with TIF funding, instead of having in a whole apartment building that's luxury apartments, and you're using funds from the village, you would think that there would need to be some worker housing in it.
Is that a better solution to this? We are trying to, it does seem maybe, and I'm not supposed to say that feeling because we're trying to accomplish the same thing.
I mean, they can't apart, but we know that TIF financing isn't going to be the only financing that goes into an affordable housing project. I mean, it's 5 to 8 different sources of funding, so.
But I think what we're trying to say is that new buildings, if they're going to get TIF money, should set aside a certain number of apartments. Because one of the speakers said you don't want clusters of just affordable or lower income housing. You
Right.
want housing mix, and the units should look the same, although the prices are not the same.
Right.
If there's granite in one, there's granite in the other. If there's, that I think is what we're trying to get across with the TIF one and even with number 1.
I'm just saying TIF is not going to be enough money.
No, but
Right.
it will be part of it,
It'll
part
be
of the
part of it.
picture.
So these are tough ones. Let's just go back to the one that we did approve. Does number 2 recommend that the village work with developers and their lenders to pursue a variety of housing loans, including TIF loan, housing tax credit assistance from the Federal Home Loan Bank. Are we trying to say the same thing in the second set of
prefer that one
Yeah.
because it allows options
Yes.
as opposed to being a requirement to do something or being so specific. That's providing a plethora of options to choose from that are going to best fit people.
In fact, I'm pretty sure that's why I voted that one higher than the other one, because that was more inclusive.
Can we just say like example, requiring a percentage when using TIF? Like, I think kind of our job is to like look for ways and examples and suggest those.
We could certainly give examples, but if we want to,
Yeah.
if we're arguing over these or like not
Yeah.
comfortable with these, and maybe these are just not clear enough, these two, that they wouldn't make it, would be that unintended consequence. We know what we want, but we're not expressing it as well as we could the other one. So should we let's look at, give a thumbs up, thumbs middle, or thumbs down for one. Thumbs up, thumbs middle, or thumbs down. All right. Number 5, thumbs up, thumbs middle, thumbs down. All right. Wow, that one's like almost a third for number 5. Yeah. All right, so 1, we had a slight majority for throwing it out. Let's talk about 5 for a few seconds here and see if we can kind of figure this one out. So what do we all use TIF for in the village? So we use TIF to require developers to build a percentage, or I'm not clear, so every time we use TIF, are we requiring builders?
They don't always do
It's
housing.
like it's promoting TIF. And to me, that's the part I guess I have issue with.
I can't imagine the school board would be too enthusiastic about that.
So promoting the use of TIF.
What if we
Word it
put the
differently.
word if in?
Or-
If TIF is used by a developer,
Or when TIF is
or
used.
when TIF is used.
But is TIF only used for housing?
It's not usually used for housing.
But it's,
Yeah.
but there's,
It has been.
it has been.
Yeah, please explain how we're using TIF, because I think maybe that's part of.
So, when a developer comes to the village for TIF, okay, they have a shortfall in how they're looking at their financials. That's the only way they can do the project. So what's difficult about what we're asking to do here is they already have a shortfall, and on top of it, we're going to now tell them you have to reduce what you can take in.
My
Every
problem
problem.
is I don't agree with what's happening on Main Street.
No.
Where we're giving $5 million in TIF to a developer that's putting in high luxury apartments where a 500 square foot unit is $950. I've had,
So we're talking about that specifically, you're.
no,
giving
there's
one
also
example.
housing.
that's-
There's also 58 houses in a TIF that are $500,000 and up. So housing in TIF has happened the last 2 TIFs that the village has put out,
You're talking about apartment housing and residential housing.
and
Well,
residential
two of the
housing.
recent ones.
2 of the recent
One
ones,
of the
yes.
last 2 was industrial, as was the
Right.
one before
Thank
that.
you,
No,
Sam.
not the
Yes.
most recent 2.
There's
Just
been
for clarification.
I think our
two
goal is not to
tips.
go back and debate any of the
Yeah.
previous usage, is that fair?
Yeah, I think that's fair.
It's to look at what's going to happen out into the future.
Yeah.
So we can sit
But-
and debate amongst many people here, the merits of TIF in different spots all night. I don't think that's our goal. I think our goal is to say, what do we want for our policies? Our first ones that were our consensus ones were there. I'm trying to explain to you for TIF, if a developer comes to us, they have a shortfall. That's the only reason. They have to have a but-for test that they meet. And if we want their project, whether it's affordable or not affordable, as a village, the board decides that, and as you're talking about with the Main Street project, the board wanted that project. Okay, it didn't have an affordable clause in there or anything. However, for future, if we want to use it for that, this is difficult for the developer to hear because we're saying, you have a shortfall and now you're going to have more of a shortfall. So are we going to give more TIF as a result of that? To make it so they can have that affordable. If we're looking to do it that way, then it's a possibility. But I'm just trying to talk about the finances of when they come for the TIF and what's the basis for it. We have to look and evaluate it, but-for test every single time. And that's not only us, that's our joint review board that looks at all of that. And the school district has a say in that, just like we have a say in the village, as do the other voting bodies.
Yeah.
Chris,
TIF
I
is a-
agree I go back to what Randy said though, if we're gonna have number 2 in the first in there, why put this kind of restriction? Because eventually our last thing of the day is going to be recommended number.
Yeah.
Which I
It
agree
ought to
with.
happen. And I don't think we need either of these, 1 or number 5, if we have number 2 on top.
We've got it as a tool through, if we go back to the active consensus, or strong consensus, we've got it as a tool. We don't have it as, we don't.
This is a requirement, and I think the
Yeah.
requirement's going to be around the number of units that we have the village working towards.
Yeah. So this is maybe, we can use it, but this is possibly the most flexible way of using it. Is that, would we say we recommend that this is folded into these things? Would that be accurate?
We already say it in number 2.
Yeah, okay. Cool. Well, all right.
Better way of saying it than the others.
Yes, yes, so the one before is a better way of saying it. So number 1, thumbs up, thumbs middle, thumbs down. Let's do it, just another quick, we voted this down a second ago, but let's make sure we get it clear.
Now, what's the
Which
question?
one? Like, near consensus for consideration. Are we dispensing with the recommended requirement of percentage of units?
Getting rid of it then?
Yeah, thumbs it down if you want it gone. Thumbs middle if you're not sure, thumbs up if you want it to remain. All right, we've got consensus on thumbs down, or majority on thumbs down. Number 5, if you want it gone, thumbs down. If you're not sure, thumbs middle. If you want it to stay, thumbs up. Thumbs up, thumbs middle, thumbs down. 6. Okay, it's gone. 9 votes voted it down. All right, 1 and 5. These are harder, aren't they, than the consensus ones? Number 2, recommended the village work with small or medium developers to build small-scale real estate projects. Pardon? Did I say something?
No, keep going.
Okay. Recommended the village works with small/medium developers to build small-scale real estate projects, co-housing, cooperative, and neighborhood scales. You want to discuss this or go straight to it? Move straight to it.
I guess I just don't, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I just don't see why the size of the developer really matters to it. I mean, that it certainly could be small and local, and that's pretty, like a big developer could come in and do it at a good cost too.
Or is this trying to say, work with a developer who maybe more specializes in small, medium housing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not a small or medium developer, but one specializes in smaller units and
Right.
smaller
That's what I
development.
got out of it.
That's what I thought too.
Maybe that's how it was intended to.
Yeah, I read it the way that you read it. But I wonder if it was intended the other way. Should we get rid of that modifier, small, medium developer?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So well, let's vote on that. Pardon? Go ahead. No, go Randy, no, please.
My question is this about the size of the project, or is this about co-housing and cooperatives?
Both.
I mean, that was pretty big.
Those are just examples.
Yeah.
Examples.
Should we take that out? Co-housing?
Or maybe we could put like example before that, rather than just being parentheses, which almost makes it look like, okay, we want small scale real estate projects, but then it almost has to be one of the ones that's listed in parentheses.
Would we be comfortable keeping that in as examples?
Mhm.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so provided with the IE, co-housing, cooperative, neighborhood scale, thumbs up, keep, thumbs middle, not sure, thumbs down, get rid of it. Yes, wait,
wait.
one more question?
What?
Yeah, were we gonna take out the word small,
Yeah.
medium, that's in
Yes.
parentheses?
Yes.
Yeah.
So you didn't vote on that though?
No, let's take, thank you. Take out small, medium. Okay. Now it reads, recommended the village work with developers to build small-scale real estate projects, i.e. co-housing, cooperative, and neighborhood scale units. Thumbs up, thumbs middle, thumbs down. Oh, Erin, one more question.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Am I remembering correctly that this came from an example, maybe someone comes in and kind of like clusters things around the village and we treat them as one project, like 4 or 5 units here, 4 here, like, does that ring a bell for anyone?
Yeah.
Is that,
Yeah.
That's what he, that's what he
okay,
said.
that's, okay, I just want to make sure.
Thumbs up, more questions? Okay. Thumbs up, thumbs middle, thumbs down. We've got 9 thumbs up. And we've got 6 thumbs middle. So, keep it.
Yeah.
Majority. All right, recommend general housing for senior citizen units without income qualifications be included as a priority in workforce/affordable housing plans. Do you want to discuss this one?
Yeah, it's a little weird because we're already talking about exempting them from our 25% limit in one part of the ordinance,
Yeah.
and then now we're talking about giving them a special treatment. I'm not saying that we don't
Yeah.
need to see your study do, but the wording of it is wonky to me.
The wording is wonky. We don't have any other recommendations that seniors housing should be a priority. And in my observation of us as a group, in the first few meetings, we discussed it and we kind of said, yeah, it's a priority, and then never discussed it again. And I'm wondering, you guys would be able to answer this, I can't answer it. Did we just assume we're going to do it because there's not a lot of, there's a clear need and not a lot of controversy around it? Or did we just neglect to really?
There's a different reason why seniors want senior housing, classified as senior housing, because they don't want noisy kids, they don't want teenagers driving around at midnight. There's a different reason than what we're talking about in terms of affordable. I think those are two different things. That, where does seniors want to live in a cluster together versus how much it costs. And I think this blends the two of those in a weird way for me.
Not specific enough, we weren't clear on this.
Yeah, and I don't understand why it says units without income qualifications.
Yes, because we're
What-
talking about that.
We're talking about seniors. Any senior I work with, and most of my seniors for my computer business, or most of my customers for my computer business are seniors, are very concerned about the cost of housing. I was just at one gentleman's house and he goes, where am I gonna live eventually if the prices keep going the way they are? That was his question to me. I said, I feel your pain, you need to talk up. Because just coming from some of us doesn't help. I said, more people need to start talking about it. And many say that to me when I go to their homes or when I go to their apartments. They're very concerned about the cost.
Aaron?
I was gonna say, I think our charge is a little more general, that maybe we can recommend that this is a priority and based on our survey, like with or without income qualifications, just an encouragement.
So change it to just a recommendation to look at senior housing, or? This is one of those, like, the wording came off the wall charts that we did that one day, the brainstorming.
I think, like, if our charge is just identified as a realistic housing need, and we heard that there is a need for increase in senior housing, we might as well leave it as a reminder.
So let's look at making a recommendation. Yes, Chris?
So I received an email this week actually from a senior that says, I asked her a question because she came to a general statement. She says, what I mean is that the older generation wants affordable housing like $650 to $900 with utilities and full furnished. So that's a very specific, that's a very specific ask.
Yeah.
And to get to that price point,
Yeah.
It's the sticker shock of the generation, frankly.
Yeah. Oh, no question.
When the houses they were purchasing back in the day was, or they were $50,000 to $30,000 for their home. And now we're talking our average is over $300,000.
Yeah.
So to get to this price point is what they would like to see, but to actually do that,
You'd have to be a public-private program. I mean, there's no way around that. And yeah, it would have to be income restricted, and it would have to be deed restricted at age and all that stuff. So,
yes.
but I mean, as far as putting that into a recommendation, though, I mean, you put a recommendation, you want to see deed restricted, income restricted, senior housing, and some people might look at that and go, I don't know what any of that means. I don't know.
One of the things that, and going to try to express very few opinions over this whole process, but when we look at the survey and the data, you look at the fact that we have a higher proportion of seniors in Waunakee than we did 30 years ago. And that dollar for dollar, those seniors in inflation-adjusted dollars have less money today than they did 20 years ago. So there is a need for it, but the actual what would seniors want and move into is a very specific thing. So when we were talking in preparation for this meeting, I was talking to you, Chris, and I was talking to Todd and Kevin, and I said, not that I want to continue to do housing projects in Waunakee forever, although I would certainly enjoy that. But this might be a point where a focus group with seniors as a follow-up project and a closer look at what their needs are and what their desires are would be a really good thing. So if we identify it as a need and recommend that they further study it, that might be a kind of a good path. But we know this is a need. We need to figure out what's going to be best for this group.
Just a perspective from senior citizens, I've talked to quite a few, and their concern is, why would I move to senior citizen housing or any other housing when I can pay my taxes, that's all they have to pay, and their utilities, and still be paying considerably less than what they would for rent in Waunakee?
Yeah, and that's
basically the care factor of who's going to take care of the tasks around the house.
Right.
And that's where the focus group comes in. And then at what point what type of housing do you need when a spouse needs care and you can no longer care for your spouse in your house and whatnot? I try not to make suggestions, but do we want to make a suggestion that we identify this as a need and we think that it needs closer examination?
I mean, if they take up our recommendation that we make an ongoing committee, that would be a great charge for that ongoing committee.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't know if that needs to be there separately.
Okay. All right, but for this one, thumbs up, thumbs middle, thumbs down. You want to take a vote?
For what are we voting on?
3. Thumbs up, thumbs middle, thumbs down.
That we keep it or that we get rid of it?
Keep it, not sure, get rid of it. Thumbs up, keep it, thumbs middle, not sure, thumbs down, get rid of it. All right. I think we're getting rid of it. 1, 2.
I mean, we shouldn't delete it completely. I mean, we should at least make a note somewhere, but.
Yeah.
About having it as a charge.
Yeah.
For the committee.
If
Yeah.
the committee doesn't exist, yeah.
Let's put that on our slide that we were going to have a rewritten one. What did I just do? Recommendation. We say that the committee recognizes, that the task force recognizes that senior housing may be a particular need in the village and suggests closer study.
Yeah.
Is that?
Yeah.
Yep. Maybe just say is up
Yes.
for doing.
Yes.
Or is that too strong for anyone?
No, it's fine. Peer review academic writing, edging every fact. All right.
Instead of saying particularly, why not a real need?
Real need? That's a better word.
Yeah. So I get for using like
How about
a $5
pardon?
word. So I get for using a $5 word, right?
Could we say clear need?
Yes.
Yes.
Our charge says
I would
realistic
just say
housing
need.
need.
Realistic?
I would
Realistic.
just take the modifier and just say a need.
It's a need, it's
It
a
needs
need.
important.
Yeah,
Yeah?
Well, or say is needed.
is a need.
Is a need.
Yeah.
Is a need.
Do you like that better?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. All right, so we have.
They need all sorts of different
Right.
kinds of
Is
senior.
that a word? Number 3.
Yep.
Number 4, take up Tom Landgraf. He was the business lecturer slash consultant slash professor. His offer to have his MBA real estate students identify and assess sites for workforce slash affordable housing within the village limits. So they descend upon the village, take pictures. They're only about 12, so small band of locusts. They're always well dressed when they come out.
Now, refresh my memory, is there a charge to this?
Yeah.
Okay.
It is free.
They're students.
They're students, graduate students.
All right.
Well, it's free, so that's all I needed.
You see what the state thinks for you.
I want to see the word available. Because we don't even know what's available anymore. What is it?
Oh, they comb through the records. They look at plant maps and then they come out and they evaluate. It's pretty cool.
Well, they also go in without a bias. They,
Yeah, for most of them, it'll be the first time they've ever been out of Madison. They're from other places, they come into Madison, they don't know they don't have, some of them don't have cars, it's like, really. Conduct the annual review of efforts towards workforce/affordable housing and issue a report to the public.
Okay,
Is
so,
this becoming a legal requirement? Chris, is this part of the new?
I don't know if it's a legal requirement.
Yeah, I am, we're calling the local government center.
to release it to the
Seminar.
public or to, I mean, it has to be.
There, and I'm forgetting which act it was passed in, but there is, I think we're basically reiterating a requirement that was passed into, the state statutes this past November, that we review comprehensive plans and evaluate for affordable housing. We may not need this, or we could put it in.
Because there should be another charge for that potential committee.
Yeah.
Like an annual infographic or report or anything.
So thumbs up, thumbs middle, thumbs down. We're redundant? Redundant, yes, redundant to what I think we have to do with the state requirement. All right, we're cooking with gas.
Did we vote on 4?
Did we go vote on 4? Oh, we did not go. Did we vote?
Yeah, we
voted
did.
on 4.
Yeah, we voted up on
Yes.
4.
We said yes, we did love free stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, and this is a
Get rid of this
recommendation that we will put in, we'll have this line in the report.
Yep.
Our recommendations. We do have a section in the report on senior housing. These options were not in consensus. Off the refund of impact fees, we just discussed impact fees. Do we want to take a thumbs up, thumbs middle, thumbs down on this? We voted not to waive them. I don't know that we want to refund them if we're not going to waive them. Ready to vote on it? Thumbs up, thumbs middle, thumbs down.
There's not a consensus going on there with any of them.
Do what? Do we want to? I feel obligated to go through.
I mean, we reversed some of the ones that we.
Yeah.
Yes.
Probably just good to look at them.
Number 2, recommend that the Plan Commission explore options for the village purchase of a site or land in order to have control over development of housing. This was something that Kurt Paulson says they do in Middleton.
Divorced is too.
I don't see any harm in exploring the option. Percent everybody is huge fans when we talk about it that night, but I don't see any harm in it as exploring the option. It's not a commitment to do it.
That might come after the MBA students. Might cite some.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that,
So we want to, are we ready to vote on this one? Thumbs up, thumbs middle, thumbs down. Keep, not sure, get rid of. Thumbs up. We have 6 thumbs up. Everyone else is thumbs middle or thumbs down. 7 thumbs up. So 7 out of, how many do we have here? 15, 7 out of 15. Do you want to discuss a little? 100. 100. All right. So we move to strike for that. All right. Number 3, create a workforce housing committee that reviews all new residential developments. Do you want to discuss this?
I would just offer that in one of the discussions at our roundtables last time was creating, this is very definitive, but creating a membership on the plan commission that would be housing focused or something different that would modify this. I don't know where that went. That's not in here, right? Because we haven't thought of that at this time.
Yeah.
What type of?
That there would be a housing task force designated person that would be an
Citizen or
advisory
sure,
to the
like
plan
that.
commission. I can't remember exactly what the discussion was.
Isn't this on number 3 on the consensus recommendation?
Is it?
Yeah, mhm.
Yeah.
It's on there.
Yes.
Yeah,
It's
so
the
that's
same.
redundant.
Okay, so this is redundant?
Well,
Yeah.
not really, I'm just saying specifically review all new residential developments.
But that could be a task of the other committee to do.
So number 3 is develop an ongoing committee that includes plan, commission, and housing task force members to continue addressing long-term affordable homeownership and rental options.
I withdraw my comment. That's the one.
Okay, okay. So, and this would be an additional committee. So we'd be recommending 2 committees, a joint committee and a committee. Redundant?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Thumbs up, thumbs middle, thumbs down. Keep, not sure, get rid of. We are getting rid of it. You like affordability, you don't like redundancy. Pardon?
Nothing.
And that's the next one, redundant? All right, create a housing authority under village control that owns land and housing, proposes developments, owns condos and apartments that are affordable with prices controlled by the village.
Government control of real estate? I don't know. I question it.
I don't think we have the economy of scale for a housing authority.
Do you want to advocate for a housing authority?
I'm not sure the village is the best person equipped to do this.
No.
That's not what the village is built for.
They got new staff people. You just set up a housing authority in Ellsworth, the village of Ellsworth. It's a really commitment on their part.
How large? How large?
How big are they?
Pardon?
How many people in the village?
8. They're small.
And they want
Yeah. They did. Yeah. They're an interesting, they're the county seat they have, they've got a whole set of things that we don't have here.
Sure.
So thumbs up, thumbs middle, thumbs down, thumbs down, yeah. All right, it is gone. Number 5, create a voluntary housing cooperative or program to ensure future affordable housing stock from existing homes. I'm seeing puzzled looks. Does anyone want to advocate for this? So I think these came out the month after we had those speakers.
I don't know what it means. I can't remember what it means.
I think these were the ones where it said like they would set the price of the house and they'd say when you go to sell it, you can't go for higher than that. And it was all
20%.
totally redone.
Thumbs up, thumbs middle, thumbs down. All right, this one gets voted out. Recommend that square footage requirements be reduced for new houses.
What is the square footage now?
Much lower in every subdivision than is actually built. So it depends on the subdivision you're in. In Savannah Village, on one side, it was, I think, 1,400 square feet or 1,500 square feet. I don't think we got that table somewhere. But people are not, the takeaway from that data was people are very rarely building at the minimum. So they buy the lot, and they maybe only have a minimum of 1,400 square feet, but they build 3,000 instead. So it's not, it ends up being one of those,
It's null and void. Nobody,
Yeah.
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 You have to set maximum, which nobody's proposed. Thumbs up, thumbs middle, thumbs down. Thumbs down. Yeah. All right. Recommend that the village create a land trust that owns land where the cost of developing housing would include land rent instead of land purchase.
shouldn't a land trust be an organized group of people other than the government?
Yes. Well, that's typically what it is. I mean, it could be.
Probably a nonprofit.
Yeah.
The village would just spur the, yeah.
You're saying spur, not create, and be part of, I mean the government, or the village.
I mean, you would want the organization, the land trust organization, to be responsible for it, not the village. The village might assist with it. I would
Right.
In theory, I think, if I'm explaining this wrong, but ultimately it would be the organization's control and responsibility for it.
Okay.
All right. Do we have Thumbs up, thumbs middle, thumbs down. Thumbs down, this one's gone. For owned housing units developed as workforce/affordable and receiving assistance for ownership, recommend that resale price restrictions on affordable, I guess, be placed on affordable units so that units remain affordable to a net income eligible buyer after the first owner.
That's a mouthful.
So basically, you can only gain 1% a year from your house.
Right.
I believe this is kind of redundant because if we build multifamily and they're tied in with FHLB financing and other things like that, they have to keep them affordable in order to continue to get.
You would discourage somebody from doing improvements to them.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it might not be, as your most valuable asset, then you'd be asking people who are in affordable housing to not maximize that asset.
Yeah.
Thumbs up, thumbs middle, thumbs down. All right, that one's gone. Last one. Recommend that the village add impact fees to fund workforce housing.
Oh, discouraging.
I'm just hearing seats shaking. Thumbs up, thumbs middle, thumbs down. All right. That's a lot of decisions. You feel like it's consensus? Yeah? Moving forward? All right, so this is we are at 7:03 p.m. My phone's going to go off in a few minutes to warn us that we've got 15 minutes left. So we have 30 minutes left, unless we want to stay a little bit afterwards to discuss this. The number of units of rental housing, we've had several discussions of this. We sent out a grid. When I redid the affordability numbers based on Kirk Landgraf's formula, or Kirk Paulson, Tom Landgraf, merged into one person. Kirk Paulson's formula for getting affordable units. Using the census data, which is the most reliable data we have, based on income in the American Community Census, we have 210 households in Waunakee that are renters right now that would potentially use income qualified housing. It doesn't specify when we look at the housing reports what level of income qualified housing that this group would use, if they're at 30% or below, or 30, 50, or we just know there are 210 households. So looking at if each one of these households, and they are not, but if each one of these households was in the lowest category at less than 30% of area median income, we know they're not. We have 70 rental units in Waunakee at this moment in time that are priced to be affordable for that group of people. That means we have a gap of 140 rental units for income qualified homes. Yes?
Okay, I have a question about the current availability number. Are those like just income restricted, or are there additional restrictions on them, like age or disability or anything like that? Are those included in that number or excluded? Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
I'll ask.
Yeah. Doug and I do not know.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Curious.
A portion of those certainly are senior houses. That portion might not be, this doesn't also specify that those rental units are price restricted. So they just may be rentals whose natural market price are falling in that category.
Okay.
Too. So yeah. So that's it's a pretty low, but it could be a second floor apartment of a house. It could be, I'm thinking of, some of the units that just maybe older housing stock and landlords would have paid for a long time. I don't know. We don't know.
Okay.
So that's the number of rental units. I'm going to look at the other numbers and then we'll come back and we'll discuss this as a whole. So number of units that are owner occupied. We know that we currently have 190 cost burdened owner households. So folks that own their homes in Waunakee and are paying way more than is recommended. This is where it gets a little more difficult. Because a cost burdened household can be at any price point. It can be somebody who owns a $100,000 house, it can be somebody who owns an $800,000 house. One of the things when I was like, what is the right number here? This is something that we're forwarding to the Planning Commission and to the village. This graph. Did you guys have a chance to look at this? Yeah. Okay, good. It's been sent around a couple of times. So the gray bar right here is in 2000 what our income distribution looked like in Waunakee. And this is our household income distribution. And it's a pretty, it's not a perfect curve, but it's a pretty decent curve. If we would have taken this, so this is 20 years ago, if we would have taken this number and inflation adjusted everybody and just moved, everybody would make a little bit more money, incomes would rise and whatnot, and just moved it up according to inflation, the income level would be this dotted line right here, because this is what we'd see today in Waunakee. Instead, what happened is that instead of going up, this group right here, this is our 80 to 100% of area median income, is instead of being 28% of the population, is 18%, it would be projected actually, they were 18%, this was, I'm sorry, no, this 18% number, or 12% of the population. So my theory is that part of the angst that we're getting from the community, and when we see on the survey that people are saying, I feel like our community is sometimes a lot of haves and a lot of have-nots, we literally have a missing middle here. They've maybe not gone, but they've not grown proportionally. This group has not grown proportionally in income. So when we think of those 190 households, or we think in terms of what does that mean for us as a community, if we can, and this is my suggestion, and again, I know I'm not supposed to be suggesting anything, if we can even out that curve, how would you guys feel about that?
Is that 190 make up that gap? Is that what you're talking about? This is a great chart, by the way.
Yeah.
And so that 11.9% to 28%, is that the 190 that you're talking about?
We don't know. We don't know. So the 190 can be cost burdened at any level.
Sure.
So there's like kind of two issues. This is who's living in the community now, and 190 of those folks are cost burdened. We don't know that they're in that group because they need to be in that group and then have bought or lost jobs or their income taxes rose or something has happened between that. But if we look at, we've got 3,591 homes in Waunakee right now. And let's see here. Let's do a little back envelope calculation. So if we were perfectly distributed of those 3,591 homes, we have 1,005 that would be affordable to that category. Let's see here, we have 3,000, we have 1,000 households in that category, not 1,000 homes, 1,000 households in that category. 3,591 homes, we now have 12%, we have 430 existing. So we are missing, we have a deficit of approximately 575 households in that category. So that's what, if we had grown proportionally, about 575 more households in Waunakee, making $80,000 to $90,000, $80,000 to $100,000 a year.
It's a great chart, looks great, but one of the assumptions you're making is that the gray line was the right line. I don't know that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, Chris, you're smiling.
No, I'm just watching, and I'm looking at the blue line out into the 100 to 200 categories, all increase significantly in that gap that you're talking about that shrunk. Did those people move up into those categories to account for that?
So did the folks that were earning 80, they should be in the 80 to 100, they move up to the 200,000?
Did they move from the 100 to 200 category?
Yeah.
If you look at the gray line down below, those all increased.
Yeah.
So that percentage is probably pretty, that's around.
Yeah, they have, we just shifted up an income level. But we would assume that this group would have shifted too, right? So here we have our gray line, if they would have shifted over, maybe we lose some of those families, but this group here, if they would have shifted over, they'd still be here, they'd be 14% instead of 12%.
That's what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah.
The gray line, where you're standing in front of, the blue drop down.
Here?
Until you have that versions there where it goes up on the top side.
Yeah.
I mean,
So there's more people making less on this side. The middle shrunk, and then there's more people making more on the right side.
Yeah.
Inverted that way.
Yep.
That's where I'm just looking at it saying that's,
The disparity between the haves and the have-nots has grown.
Yes,
But we've seen
that's
this
what
actually-
Maria said.
the have-nots though, have,
I know, but
So it's
right,
net
not
increase.
total have-nots, but
those numbers
they're,
have increased.
they're not-
As far as the amounts.
Yeah.
So I don't want to be a pessimist here, but part of it is, I mean, one, there's a population difference obviously between the two, so you're going to have more of it. And then the other part is and they kind of talked to this, I don't know if Kurt said this in the thing or if I talked to him afterwards and he told me, but in some cases those numbers go down just because people have left the community because they don't want to stay in the community anymore because they can afford to stay in the community. So you could have a shift of people are moving into the newer, expensive houses, and then the people who were in that lower bracket were just left Waunakee in general, but there were more people replacing them, and the newer ones were people buying the older houses and rehabbing them or flipping them, what have you. So I think that would explain part of the difference.
I would change my terminology to haves and have-nots to
Yeah.
more affluent. People have moved in, and I see that from 100 to 100, so 149 going from 11 to 21%, about 10% increase, 150 to 199, about 4 to 19, so another 15% increase. Those are significant changes from what I see. The fluency thing anybody moving in, which is where we're seeing our housing costs, the new housing costs, be up much higher. Those people are what are accounting for that being moving into the community.
Did the housing stock exist for them in 2000?
Probably not.
Yeah.
I didn't live here, so that's why I'm asking.
No, I would say that the housing, right.
2008 was a.
Well, that's the whole country though.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, right,
a while
right.
ago.
I wouldn't look at that, I'm just saying between 2000. I just didn't know what the housing stock situation.
That's where I see the biggest shift, is what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
From year 2000 to 2017.
One of the things, too, we also know from the real estate sales data is that, 7:15 bell, so I'll sort of feel like I should be getting up and getting a cup of coffee. My morning alarm. Homes that are in that price category, and this is in the report, aren't coming up, they're coming up for sale, but they're not coming up for sale in a sufficient and enough fashion to fill that gap right now. We just can't, if everyone that sells a home in that category could sell 3 or 4 homes in that, if they had 3 or 4 homes, they could sell in the $300,000 range, we probably wouldn't be seeing this a whole lot, because we would have homes at that price point. Which is a good thing, if you've got a home in that price category, you're holding on to it, it's increasing in value, this is very good for people that are owning homes. So the question is, I want you to hold that thought.
Yes, that's what I was thinking.
Hold that thought in our minds.
I was just trying to show that
Yeah.
there's a greater disparity.
We're going to bounce back and forth a little bit here because I want you to have these 2 pictures of where we're looking at 2 groups of people that were looking for affordability, right? Renters and homeowners. And we said a while ago, I guess we still the consensus of this group, that we want to serve both in the community. We want housing options for people who need both housing options. So going back to the idea of rentals, so let's just let that kind of marinate for a few seconds. 210 households in Waunakee would use income qualified housing or would qualify for income qualified housing. 70 rental units exist. We have a gap of 140. We should have a recommendation that we take to the board. What should our recommendation be for rental housing?
For how much time?
I would say like a 5-year. I think we talked about a 5-year plan. the last time around, short enough that we can be accountable, but not so long that we're putting it off. So what would we say? Does anyone want to make a recommendation for a number? Looking from a practical standpoint, 2025, we would like to see
I'll start 100.
Pardon?
I'll start 100.
100.
That's about 70%.
About 70% of that.
Are we just talking the 210 that we're missing, right? For the,
Yeah, we're
for the
talking
30%?
yes. This is what we
Of
say.
AMI.
So far. Like if we were to say we're going to meet the needs of, we're going to use the measuring stick, the yardstick, who's existing in the community now. We don't know who's
Yeah.
actually going to run these units.
Right.
But this is the yardstick we're going to use. We've got an opening bid of 100
Over 5 years.
over 5 years.
Oh, over 5 years.
Over
Yes.
5 years, it's not,
Each year over 5 years.
We are, let's also keep in mind too, we are adding, is it on average, what is our cap for new housing units? Is it?
It's not a cap,
Well,
we try to
it's a
get
cap.
under 125
Yeah.
new issued permits per year.
Okay.
That's worked well for the school district, but we've been averaging about 90, so we've not really been approaching that 125.
That's
We're averaging about 9 a
single
year.
family.
Single family, single family.
All right. And you, duplexes are included in something like?
So in 5
Duplexes
years,
and
it's,
triplexes.
in five, we're looking at a 5-year number, in 5 years, it's how many, Chris,
I'm sorry.
in 5 years, how many homes, sites would be available?
I just want to try to understand your question. So you're saying,
Which one, how many, pick a number for
how many
5
lots
years?
do we need to have
If
available?
we continued with the restriction on the number that are
Yep.
built, and we went to the max each year, how many would that be in 5 years?
No.
Well, I'd be 600.
600.
112, 625.
625.
125 a year times
600.
625.
625.
And we're
So
averaging about 90.
the recommendation of 100 gets you at 1/6 of the,
Well, are we talking about pure housing, or are we talking about?
this is rental,
Rental.
okay.
So it's different, I mean, we're talking about different things, I think, right now.
Yeah, two different things.
So if we're building 625 new homes in 5 years, and we allow 25%, so for 625 new homes, 25% of that could also add an apartment complex, is that correct? Right, by the ordinance that exists right now. So if 625 new homes were built, we could build
156.25.
156, you're good with math. We could build 156.25 new apartment buildings compared to those 625 new homes, keeping within the 25% of what the current ordinance is. That,
Not buildings.
units, yes, thank you. Units,
Units.
156 units. Units,
But they're not,
yes.
but that would mean that they would all be affordable.
Correct. They wouldn't all be for
And I don't know that you can find
And they wouldn't
developers
all
to
be in
build just
one building
affordable.
either.
well, you don't want that. You don't want
Right.
any unit that's all affordable. You want mixed,
Right.
inclusive
So
housing.
the
Yes.
numbers don't work to that. I guess maybe that's what I'm saying, is that
Yeah.
those numbers don't work.
But we could have 156 units of apartments built, and we could make so many of them affordable and so many not. Then, and at least then we would, with the current ordinance that's in effect. Over 5 years.
Even with the 25%, we're also not talking about any redevelopment that could occur that could have affordability in there.
Right.
Where did those two numbers come together?
Where did 100,
So if we're talking about, what, 156?
156.25.
I'm gonna just go with 156.
Kristen said it.
somebody gets a walk-in closet.
If we're 156 units in the new, what percentage of that do we want to have as have to look at that number, and then if we have any redevelopment, what percent do we want in that redevelopment? That's what you can, that's how I
Yeah.
get into a number.
Yeah. Well,
50%?
so if we would assume, so adding
75 for a number?
Yeah.
75 new units, affordable?
Affordable.
May I make a point? With,
Yeah, let's look in a second, yeah, so you were saying 75?
This 75 over 5 years.
Yeah.
Roughly that. If they put apartments.
It would double what we have now in 5 years, and not include redevelopment. Would that include redevelopment, or would that include redevelopment?
I would just like to make the comment that with redevelopment, you very oftentimes lose units. So if you put in an apartment building and you know, put in if it's a 150 unit apartment building, you get 20 workforce housing, and you've lost that many, took down that many to do the redevelopment. Have you gained anything?
Wouldn't take
I'm
25
not sure I'm following
homes.
you.
I'm saying, okay,
I
you know, if you have a whole block and you're taking the whole block out to redevelop it, and you're going to have 30 or 40 units that are workforce housing, and you've taken out all this workforce housing where people are living now that's affordable, have you really gained anything?
So I'm just clear with what you're saying. So you're saying if a developer came in, redeveloped it, and took out 6 homes that were affordable?
Or, you know, 20 homes or whatever, I don't know how many.
Well, probably both sides of the
Yeah,
blocks.
both-
That would
both
probably be
sides, yeah.
in the older part of town, between the range
Depends
of
on what we're
12.
talking about for the development. Are we talking about 100 units in that development?
I'm saying if they do 100
30
units and
units.
100 units and 30 units are workforce, and they've taken out 20 homes that might be 2 flats, or some of them 2 flats, have you really gained anything?
I think that's what we would have to assess with the
Yeah.
developers coming in.
Yeah, so that, I just wanted to bring that up.
There's no way to know that right this
Right, but what I'm saying is we have to be aware of that.
I think redevelopment can also include, unless I'm wrong, it doesn't need to be redeveloped existing housing. We can take down commercial buildings that have gone out of service, the back or something,
Right.
and rebuild that as housing. And we do have several of those sites in town.
Comes right in.
Which would be a great place for development, right across from the park. Recommendation then, so the recommendation, the suggestion has been made for 75 units over 5 years. Do we want to discuss this some more? Do we want to give it a thumbs up, a thumbs middle, thumbs down?
Those are apartment, we're talking apartments here?
Rental apartments.
Yes.
Yes. We want to discuss it some more, or we want to vote? Vote? Thumbs up, thumbs middle, thumbs down. Wait, one more?
I still have a question.
Okay. Yeah, that's okay. We're consensus.
My question would be, at the rate of growth and with businesses coming in, would we end up, just have it on, would these 75 over 5 years be sufficient to meet the need, or would it extend and create a larger gap?
So we have 70 currently,
70 currently.
and in 5 years, we're going to double what we currently have.
Right, but what might happen with population wanting to come in, especially if there are more places to work here in town?
Well, I think you have to keep evaluating that throughout.
Yeah.
You're saying over 5 years, but you're going to have this committee of the planning commission that should be looking at this periodically to address that either more or less, depending, I guess, what's going on.
And that could be a recommendation. And once these are built, we then go back and recommend, or once these are built through the 5 years of past, we go back and we make it a subsequent recommendation. Not weird,
Or
focus
do
and
we
not
make those
Ongoing.
changes rolling through those 5 years? That would always have a 5-year plan. At the end of the first year, okay, we have 4 of the original 5 years, but then we add another one.
We recommend each year.
And we recommend each year based on what we are seeing as the predictions for what's going on, and then adjust the numbers accordingly.
Okay, so we've got 2 recommendations on the board. Recommendation, annual reevaluation. Okay, so let's look at the first one. Let's take it. Are we ready for a thumbs up, thumbs middle, thumbs down at 75?
Very true.
Thumbs up, thumbs middle, thumbs down. Keep, not sure, no. 1, 2, 10 thumbs up, 11 thumbs up. All right, so that one goes. That one stays. Annual reevaluation. So we evaluate at the end of each year and we.
Oh, I voted for the wrong one then. I thought that's what we were doing.
Okay, so
Yeah,
we vote for 75 units over 5 years.
Okay.
That's what we're voting for now. Let's take a recount. So thumbs up, yes, 75, not sure, thumbs down.
I don't know.
12, actually. 12, okay. Annual reevaluation. So at the end of each year, we reevaluate and recalibrate. Thumbs up, thumbs middle, thumbs down.
Who's we?
Yeah, who's gonna do that?
Who specify that? Does the plan commission reevaluate?
No, the,
No,
yeah,
the
the
board
housing
committee that's
task
going
force
to be
that we're
created.
recommending to be created.
I like your thoughts on this. I think it's difficult because when you develop an area, it's more than a year to
Right.
take. So in the beginning right now, it's going to be very difficult to say we're going to do an annual
It
reevaluation.
would have to be contingent on when that first year is actually happening. Once a year has actually happened, because if we're talking 75 over 5 years, that's what, about 13 or 14 a year? And once we get that first 13 or 14, then we can start evaluating again. I realize that you've got to have.
So what I'm getting at
time.
is maybe say after the second year, or after
Okay.
in year 2, you start to reevaluate that, because in the first year, it's just not
Or
going to happen
after the
that fast.
third
that
year,
we're gonna-
even after the third year would be a logical place.
Yeah, give it 2 years and then start the evaluation.
Because hopefully the planning, once it gets going, the planning is in the pipeline, and then of course those would be justified developers too.
And I agree that it should be the task force looking
Yeah.
to do that, to evaluate that.
Yeah.
All right, so evaluation in year 3, after we've had some time to make some progress.
And then annual, yeah.
Yeah.
Subsequent annual evaluations. All right, thumbs up, thumbs middle, thumbs down. All right, it passes. Guess what? It is 7:29. We want to stay an extra few minutes and we come up with a recommendation. You guys are troopers.
Absolutely.
Do you want to leave or just going to leave the whole year's work?
No.
No.
It was 7:30, it was July, it was a nice night. I'm sorry. So, all right, so here we are. This is the hard one, right? So, this is the gap that but maybe this is what I see as the gap. I don't know if this is what everybody sees as the gap.
I would just say the comment I made earlier, that top line is based upon a 2000 profile.
Yeah.
Is that the profile that we believe to be causing, is the gap? I mean, I don't, it's a great chart and I like the way you forecast it out, but it's based on 2000 data and we're a different mix.
So where would we say is a good place?
Well, even if you made that a smooth curve, you'd be increasing by half of that gap.
So we'd be like we're just a little bit below 18%.
Yeah, you'd be somewhere there. Yeah.
So what would be, let's do back of the envelope calculation. Okay. Okay, so we say we have 430 now households in that category. We would want 18%. That would be 646. That means we have a gap of 216 households. Now that's not houses. So that's, you know, with the assumption we're making is that we had houses available in this price range, this is what would be doing. These are $250,000 to $300,000 houses.
So potentially, we've increased 75 of those through this affordable apartments that we just talked about.
Or apartments, the affordable apartments are probably, if we're doing
They
income.
would be a part of this number, right?
This group, the 80 to 100%, these are $80,000 to $100,000 households.
Okay.
So I guarantee you that if we were to build apartments that were mixed income, a good portion of the market rate apartments are going to go to the people that are renting apartments now, which are young millennials. Two income, first jobs out of college, 25 to 30, no kids. They will be in that income category. Or not out of college working, you know, good trade jobs and making decent money. So a portion of those households will be renters and just not ready to own a home. A portion of those will be people whose kids have left home. And I think a lot of the folks that are moving downtown right now, empty nesters who want to walk to the library and the restaurants. Apparently this is a hot spot.
So is the number we're trying to solve for how many homes?
How many, so it's a consideration of households and what price homes we think these households are going to be attracted to. Yeah, so homes and households kind of hand in hand.
And today we've got 625. We've already decided that that's 156 of those are apartments, so what's that, 400 and something, 470, 75 that are individual homes? Is that?
Yeah,
that the
using the 25%.
Yeah.
And these families would use, this would be a combination of rental and a combination of owned homes, depending on what their family structure or their household structure looks like. So 216, we would expect 216 households in this category to move in. A portion of those will rent, a portion of those will buy. It's a lot of math, isn't it?
Well, it's 468 if we're saying 75% of the 625 that we build would be 469.
So what I'm hearing is that based on our number from before, 625 was the number, right?
625, 75% of that is
So your
460.
number at 216 is roughly a third
Yeah.
of the homes
And I'd say,
into this mix.
yeah, housing units, because they wouldn't necessarily all be homes.
But
So we have to kind of,
yeah.
yeah.
What we put for apartments and the homes.
Yeah.
is roughly a third.
And so if we have 75 of the 625 that are rentals, presumably the other, we have another, I don't know how many, what the proportion of rentals would
And
be.
based on what Robert was doing several discussions about, $300,000 home.
Yeah, 300, 350.
Is what we're talking about today.
Yeah.
In this category. Before the list.
So out of our 216 new households that we would want in the community, what percentage would we aim for as homeowners? Or what number would we aim for as homeowners out of those?
I'll be the idiot again, 75%.
75%?
Yes.
Okay. So 75%, my phone went to sleep, at 216, be 162 homeowners,
Over 5 years.
home-owning households. What do you guys think of that?
I like 160, it's an easier number to look at. But
Oh, it's 162.49.
I'm not gonna get an exact number. Round it down to that.
Okay. So in our other recommendation would be, so are we making a recommendation that 160 home owner households, 80 to 100% AMI houses priced at around 300,000. Am I being too specific?
No?
No?
I think we need to be that specific.
Yeah.
If the numbers are what we agree on, but it has to be that specific.
All right, you want to thumbs up, thumbs middle, thumbs down? Are we ready for that?
Yep.
Whatever discuss.
And this doesn't include the 75?
This doesn't include the 75, and on top of this 160, there will be rental units that will be market price that probably will put people in this income category.
And we're only going to have permits for 625. Right? Is that roughly?
Right. That's the max.
All right.
Over 5 years.
Over 5 years,
Over
yes.
5 years.
Yeah. So we would have,
32 a year,
you've
approximately.
got a pained look on your face.
I think 160 is a lot.
I don't.
Mm-mm.
No?
Over 5 years.
Over 5 years? That's
That would
only
be
32 a
32.
year.
32 a year.
Annually, and you consider they can be duplexes. I mean, you can have 1 to 2 units, you just can't go over 2.
If we're allowing 125, but only building approximately 90, over 5 years, that's 175 that aren't being used, so still underneath that number.
Do we,
And I think right now, this year, we're around 65. This year. Right now. So we'll probably be right around there in the median.
so how are we feeling? Pretty good. Do we want to discuss it more? Thumbs up, thumbs middle, thumbs down, thumbs up? Thumbs middle? Yes, Chris. So,
We have our school superintendent here. Based on what you're hearing with these numbers, that well with the school's model for funding.
The number you threw out before, Chris, the 125, and that's a number that was 25 years old. And it was based off of an old funding formula for schools. So we're way outside of that. That's kind of a number that was used for like a manageable growth. Right now, we're receiving 75 to 90 homes a year is manageable. So for us to build, we have record paper today, we have potential referendum in 2020. Our last one was in 2014. So it's been able to manage the growth that's coming and plan for it accordingly. So that level of growth is sustainable.
So what we're talking about is sustainable.
That is, yeah, what we're talking about is within kind of those current growth ranges, that's sustainable.
Perfect. That's great.
All right.
I just wanted everybody to hear
that's
that.
really important.
Because what we're talking about is within the current kind of parameters that we're working with, just trying to determine where that level of growth, it seems is sustainable given that it's staying consistent with what we're trying to maintain.
Thank you. Okay, sorry.
That's all right. Thumbs up, thumbs middle, thumbs down. Yeah, unanimous. I think we deserve a round of applause. Done a tremendous amount of work. You guys will see within the next few weeks a draft of this report that I will email to you. It will be proofread. And we use AP style though, so, and I don't like an Oxford comma, so I'm just gonna work on that. I don't like, I'm anti-Oxford comma, and I double space after every period, which marks me so. Yeah, so you guys have done a great job. We will, going forward, have some communication about when this will be introduced to the Plan Commission, and whether or not we want to meet informally ahead of time to talk about how that presentation will be structured. Would that be all right if we met ahead informally, or do we need to actually call that as a public meeting?
So first, I'd like to thank everybody for being on this and volunteering to be here and putting your time and efforts into this and giving all your input. It's important to the village to have that. So I want to say thank you for that. I want to say thank you to Kristen for running these and when we have this introduced to the Plan Commission, if you guys can find the time to be there when it's being talked about with the Plan Commission, I think that's important to show that as a youth.
One question. Could you have Todd send us a email, please, just to give us a reminder?
When it's,
Yeah,
when it's
yeah.
happening, absolutely. Absolutely, we can do that. As far as meeting ahead of time, I don't, what purpose would that be?
Pat ourselves on the back.
So we have the recommendation, that's what's going to go to the plan commission. I think it's just important that people be there. That if the plan commission wants to go. I appreciate that. But I'm just thinking that if we're all at the plan commission, that shows a sign of strength for coming from this committee to the plan commission as well. I'm only one member, so the rest of them will be there, and they need to hear from you guys as well. We'll get the report, but if they have questions, it's important that you be there to answer.
I have a suggestion when it comes to appointing a housing task force person, that it be someone that has come from this group that's gone through this whole process.
It's very important.
I agree.
Yeah, because we've learned a lot.
Maybe more than one.
Yes, yeah.
Yes, more than one.
Okay. Sounds good?
Great.
All right, thank you.
You guys are
everybody.
wonderful.
Motion, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
I'm going to give it to Robert. I think he said it first, and I'm going to give it to Natalie, because I think she said it second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Thanks, everybody.
Let me know when I can come. I don't mind if you're doing projects. I don't care.